Hi, it's Pastor Jeff Elliott from Cape May Lutheran Church with our Bible study for the week. We are following John's Gospel. We are in chapter 5. Those who study the Bible with us, who follow along in this study, will realize that we're skipping over. Last week we were in chapter 6. We're going back now to chapter 5 because Rudolf Bultmann is certain and has convinced me that the current order in the Gospel of John is wrong, that actually the feeding miracle and the water miracle at the Sea of Galilee should be before in the book of signs, the miracle of the man who was crippled for 38 years and the healing of that man. So we're picking up chapter 5, the healing of the man who was crippled for 38 years. Jesus goes up to the city of Jerusalem. It's different than in the Synoptic Gospels. In the Synoptic Gospels, Jesus makes that one great trip to Jerusalem, and he there challenges the Romans at the last week of his life with the cleansing of the temple. He's pretty much apolitical to that point, and doesn't. He's critical of the social order of his day by not participating in it. He doesn't participate in the economic and social system of his day, but he is not outwardly critical of it or doesn't act against it. When he cleanses the temple right after Palm Sunday in the Synoptic Gospels, going up to the city of Jerusalem intentionally, then he is arrested and executed by the Romans for rebellion, for insurrection against Rome. So here in John's Gospel, he goes back and forth to Jerusalem on a number of occasions. We don't know which one is right. I would imagine the synoptic model marks the closest. He's the oldest of the Gospels and historically probably the most accurate, but in some things John geographically, when it comes to Jewish customs, is closer than some of the synoptics are. So we can't know for certain, but I would say in any event here, Jesus goes up. It's a festival. Is he blending two festivals together? Some people think maybe he is, that John is blending festivals here, but Jesus is going up to Jerusalem for a festival celebration of some kind. So when he goes there, he goes to a site that's frequented by people who are looking to have a miraculous cure of their illness. There's a passageway into the city, a gateway. It's known as the Sheep's Gate. In the Hebrew language, that's Beit Zatha or Beth Zatha. Around this pool, there are basically 5 porticos. Inside the porticos are many different people who have various ailments. John says they're blind, they're lame, they're paralyzed. So they are human beings, all in need of healing. Now, some superstition has developed around this pool. People believe that if you can get yourself into the waters when they stir, when they move, then if you can be the first one in to the waters when they stir, that you will experience a healing. So this should not surprise us. This is very similar to many Christian miraculous healing sites. We think of Lourdes, we think of Fatima, but there are many sites where faith healing is reputed to take place. And this is a similar type of superstition or similar type of belief. So in the gospel, one of the folks that again, a created character that John, the author of John's gospel, creates for the purpose of this interaction with Jesus, this dialogue that will take place. He creates and constructs these dialogues for this gospel. And this is a man who is crippled for 38 years. Now, Bishop Spong in his commentary is the only one I saw that made any, tried to make sense of the number, tried to say that there was 38 years between the year 50 and the year 88. And that's somehow that John's gospel was written about the year 88, and why 50 would be of any importance to anyone, no one can say. 70 makes sense as being a year of importance for when the temple is torn down, the city is sacked. 30 makes sense for the crucifixion and resurrection. 50 to me is ambiguous why that would be, but I don't think the 38 years is at all symbolic in this case. John does a lot with symbolic numbers, not here that I can see. John is saying the man is crippled for a long, long time. 38 years is a long time. It's the great majority of a lifetime in that era. And so here we just have this man who's crippled for a long, long time, and Jesus speaks directly to him and says, "Do you wish to be healed?" Obviously, the crippled man says he would, but he cannot be, because no one's there to put him into the waters when it stirs. And so every time, I try and get myself there, someone gets in the water before me. I'm just not quick enough. So I think, that's self-evident. I don't think that it's evidence that the man lacks courage or decisiveness or anything of that nature, just that he is limited in that way. That someone who is kind of systemically cut off from experiencing that grace. And Jesus is able to basically override that systemic injustice and says to the man, "Rise, take up your pallet and walk." So that's in John 5:8. And the man hearing this does exactly as he's been instructed. Now, because we know that historically Jesus, at least in all of the Gospels, Jesus is always shown healing on the Sabbath, and that's being interpreted as Sabbath breaking. The Pharisaic Judaism did not hold healing on the Sabbath to be Sabbath breaking. That's not necessarily a true statement, but it's in the Gospels, and that was held by them to be the way that at least some Pharisaic Judaism that they knew of reacted to that Jesus was somehow a Sabbath breaker because he worked on the Sabbath. And that's the thing that spurs on the plot here. So the man walks off carrying the stretcher that he's on, and when some of the authority folks see him, they say to him, "It's a Sabbath and you're carrying your pallet. You're working on the Sabbath. That's breaking the law." And the man responds by saying in chapter 5, verse 11, "Hey, the man who healed me is the one who told me to pick up the pallet and carry it. So I'm doing as he instructed me to do." In a sense, the argument has been made that he's more or less passing the buck, kind of like Adam and Eve. Oh, it was Eve gave me the fruit. Oh, it was the serpent who led me into it. So we get that argument. I think the man's fairly innocent here. Jesus did tell him to pick up the pallet and to carry it. So Jesus is unconcerned about this being Sabbath. At least as the response is shown, he has a different interpretation of Sabbath. I think is the best way for us to say that or to understand that. Jesus is one who walks across boundaries, and certainly by the time of the early Christians, after Paul, certainly people are transgressing all kind of boundaries concerning what would be considered to be a taboo under keeping keeping kosher. So he is certainly, that's what drives the conversation here. Um, they get into a discussion about this. The religious authorities are asserting that it's just always categorically wrong to work on the Sabbath, even if it's to do a good work. And Jesus says his Father's working still on the Sabbath. So if God works on the Sabbath to do good, so may Jesus. Frankly, Rabbinic Judaism would not have had any argument with that. They would have agreed that working on the Sabbath is good if it's something good being done on the Sabbath, then that can suspend the other rules to rescue life, like to feed an animal or something of that, even that type of thing. It can be done. So Jesus, when he says that he's working on the Sabbath, like the Father is working, like God is working, in 5:17 he says, I am working, and there the charge, of course, is made that he makes himself to be equal with God. John makes Jesus to be equal with God. There is no question of that. Jesus, later on in his discourse that he has, in interpolation, it's put in the middle of the original Gospel of John, in a later edition of John's Gospel, the conversation he has with his disciples at the Last Supper, in which there is no Holy Communion, but a foot washing instead, and long blocks of teaching. Jesus makes the point again and again that he and the Father are one. So John definitely sees that Jesus and God are one, and they say that Jesus makes himself equal with God, and of course to them that would be blasphemy. And that I'm sure is what came up when John's community was put out of the synagogue. Blasphemy, I'm sure, was part of the charge that was leveled against them, because obviously there's still tremendous controversy about the deity of Jesus between Christians and Jews, Christians and Muslims, who say you don't make partners with God. So this now is the thing that is at issue at this time. It's another of the book of signs. By the time we get to the final of the signs of the book of signs, the raising of Lazarus from the dead will be there soon. We get an even stronger identification of Jesus with God, but it's very strong here. He says in John 5:26, the Father has life in himself, and the Father has granted to the Son also to have life in himself. So that's, I think, the key. What's going on here? This is why Jesus has come. This is, him working out these signs to show, in fact, that he is at one with God, that he and God are one. So that's basically the healing of the man who was crippled for 38 years and the importance of that particular text.